My name's Noelle. I'm a co-founder of this lovely space, House of Web3, and also the CMO of Edge Node, which is a core developer within the Graph, who brings this space to life. We have a really exciting night in store for you. We have none other than Mark Beylin that we're going to be speaking to. And then you're all going to be able to ask some questions. And then after that, we're also going to have three co-creators kind of give us the alpha on what they're building. So I always think this is super fun. We're going to have Eric Alberg talk about Giga, Michael Harrington about 3FA, and Henry Lau on Starda. So super exciting. For those of you that don't know Mark, Mark is a VC at BoostVC and one of the early venture funds to jump into the crypto space. He had, before joining Boost, he was an early builder on Ethereum. And then, in addition to investing in bold ideas, Mark writes some incredible thesis and articles. I know I'm in marketing and we often look at his papers. He did one that was the token is the product that we have dissected and taken a look at. I actually said like, hey, can you come speak about that? And he's like, well, I have this other one. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the other one, which is the hard crypto thesis, which I had never even heard about. I think you coined the name. So with that, love for you to give a warm welcome to Mark Beylin. Is it working? Uh-oh. Is it working?
There we go. Hello? There we go. Thank you so much for having me. That was a
Yeah.
wonderful intro.
Thank you. I will say a little fun fact is that your sister Eva was the director of the Graph Foundation. So I feel like it kind of makes you a little bit of fam.
Definitely connected natively to the
Right?
family. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the questions I love to ask everybody, and I'm sure you've gotten a gazillion times, is how you even got started in crypto. And then with that, I want to know who red pilled who. Was it you or Eva?
Yeah, it was me. I'm grateful to say that I helped my sister get into crypto and she did incredible stuff in crypto. But yeah, I got really lucky. I had been building in sort of the area around like decentralized technologies, but not at all related to blockchains, more so like just distributed networks, and had built some hackathon projects. Got really lucky, got an internship at Deloitte in a group that was that I thought was interested in decentralized technologies, was actually building tools for cryptocurrencies in like early 2016. And so that turned out of Toronto. And that turned out to be mostly focused on Ethereum, and because Ethereum had just launched. And so that kind of just sent me down the rabbit hole around, the Bitcoin white paper, the, Ethereum yellow paper, just reading all that, trying to understand it. And then, yeah, we built a bunch of interesting stuff. I eventually was an intern at Consensus at their Toronto office as well, employee 120. Got to see a bunch of really cool stuff early there, and then left and was back at school and built my first company. So that's kind of my entree story. But yeah, got really lucky, kind of in the right place at the right time. Looking back, at least, that's what it feels like.
I can tell you're an underachiever.
Yeah.
Big one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive in and talk about hard crypto thesis.
Mhm.
So, for those of us that are here, like myself, that maybe just knew DeFi, NFTs, like explain to us what hard crypto is.
Sure. Yeah. So hard crypto, the idea is basically taking crypto and applying it to like atoms versus bits, or like hard tech versus like soft tech. And I think, since I've been in crypto, I've seen so many different, like social networks, or, different types of software, right, being built, different digital spaces. And NFTs, obviously, it's a big part of that narrative. But I think what I'm really excited about these days is physical world, real world applications for crypto systems, and taking tokens, taking crypto native apps or DeFi, right? DeFi primitives, but applying them to kind of like real world business lines, real world domains that like touch the physical world, that touch physical systems. And I think we're starting to see kind of the buds are showing with this now being a really great time for this kind of to happen. And yeah, it's an area I'm really excited about personally.
touching on real world assets, I feel like, crypto Twitter has themes and,
Mm,
memes were everywhere for a while, but now it's like every other one is talking about real world assets.
mm,
So are RWAs like a slice of the pie
mm.
for this, or is it the same? How are they different?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think of it as, yeah, hard crypto is not a real word. I made it up one day when I was trying to explain to my bosses what I was talking about, because basically there's like RWAs, there's DeSci, and then there's DPIN. And those are the three kind of main categories we can look at and say these are like all of the sort of physical world crypto systems. You have like the assets, investment vehicles, or, DeFi systems, connected systems, DPIN. But there's all this other stuff that you could do too, right? Outside of those three areas as well. And that was kind of the point of writing the article, and kind of pointing out some of the dynamics that were at play, that there was actually like the scope was much broader, and like thinking outside of just like tokenizing real world assets and putting them on chain, or, DeSci DAOs just being these like very basic investment vehicles, thinking about these kind of like more esoteric applications or protocols that could be built with humans and devices that are connected or sharing data, or doing different tasks that contribute to these big networks. And I think, like I said, I think now is a really great time for that. It's kind of again, the buds are showing. I'm very bullish on Helium. I don't know. I know I saw Helium. If you open your phone, you can see like Helium, right, is like a Wi-Fi network that anyone can connect to right now. I don't know. Someone's running a Helium node here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
George over here. First of all, we had helium here and they were pitching it. He's put helium things all over here and I think he's getting paid for it.
you are, right? Yeah, you're getting paid. Yeah, exactly. He's getting paid.
Yeah, he's a maxi. I think his parents have it, his grandparents.
Yeah. It's super low key. It's
Yeah.
kind of like mining crypto back in like 2012. It was
Yeah.
like people in dorm rooms just like plug it in, like very low key, but it's a real thing. And
Yeah.
the dynamic is the same, right? Where it's like anyone could just buy a device, plug it into your Wi-Fi network, but all of a sudden there's just like this totally new, like broadband network or telecom company, basically, right? That services the market, but it's upheld by random folks like us rather than this like massive company. And I think like that sort of as a use case is such an obvious thing in front of us that it's so easy now to look at other domains in our lives, other like where large incumbents with like super high fixed cost moats basically can be overtaken by these like token networks.
Yeah. So what does crypto bring as like a superpower to this? Because I get this a lot. I have a fiance in AI, and every time I'm like, oh, but blockchain, he'll always be like, but why do I need the blockchain for this piece or that piece? So what does crypto bring to this that like nothing else can bring?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think smart contracts, one element is just like smart contracts as a primitive of like being able to encode business logic in this really sort of like serious way that can't be changed easily, that anyone can access, anyone can audit, anyone can participate in. I think that's like kind of a core component of these kinds of large decentralized networks where with something like Helium, right, where instead of every individual sort of like negotiating some interaction or having to worry about the sort of payment rails, all of that sort of trust is provided by this like stable network that the application can then just sort of surf on top of. So I think that's kind of how I roughly think about it, and I think that like will remain true again outside of the the Heliums of the world into these kind of everything else as well. I think tokens are another big part of it too, right? Where like beyond just like a blockchain. Tokens, or networks where liquidity lives, being able to use that liquidity to, whether it's like, I don't want to say fund a project per se, but to drive value from people who are receiving sort of benefits from the network towards people who are providing that value to the network, which is kind of the same principle we get from like the Bitcoin network, right, of miners and people who transact, but again, applied to any use case.
And also the graph with tokenized.
And also the graph. Right, exactly. That's like the core premise of any.
Show the graph.
Yeah, no, and that's like any good utility token will have that kind of core mechanism. And again, just thinking more outside the box. That's been my kind of core goal.
Yeah, thinking about outside the box, I'm going to have to look at my notes for this one. But you came up in your thesis. It was pretty cool at the end. I was saying like, gosh, because there's so many people here that are always trying to start, a business. And I'm like, you pretty much gave like a plethora of examples like, hey, build this and come talk to me. Some of them were trash pickup, so decentralized trash cleanups, a Save Me, a community-driven emergency response, Skyfly, weather risk markets with satellites. All super cool. You had a bunch of others. By the way, please do use this QR code to go to his thesis and read it. But with those, which one do you think, right? Because you came up with those is like the most fun or something that you could really see running with, and what would that look like?
The one that's most obvious is the satellite data prediction markets. That one is, to me, when I think about DeFi again, a lot of what we're seeing around prediction markets these days, when we think about that seeping into the real world and creating value for like real world stakeholders, the example here, right, is like you could have satellite data, with some Oracle type system feeding into a blockchain that is settling prediction markets based on weather outcomes. And so the idea is that people now can, who are making like various investment decisions, normally they might hedge their sort of various types of risk using weird types of securities or derivatives, or there's all these complex financial products that banks and investment banks and different entities sell, right, in the traditional finance world. Now prediction markets can essentially offer the same thing at a way lower cost and a way larger diversity, basically like globally, and again in a way that settles like on chain perfectly. So that's like another example that I think I'm excited for, and more of those kinds of like real world markets that aren't again powered by I don't know, like some centralized exchange, but are just these kind of like global spaces for like information or truth. But that again is very valuable for, again, like a lot of companies who have to hedge like weather risk and things like that. It's a big part of kind of the economy. And
Yeah. I liked some of your ideas too. The one I liked the most of the ones is the car charging one that like everybody out like from personal things, because there's so many people that have the ability to charge an electric car at their house, and then trying to find a way to make that like community driven and with token. I think that's like a great idea too.
I like the idea. I think there was one around eggs. That
Yeah,
was
there
my
was an egg
favorite.
one too.
And it was like everyone would have like a chicken in their backyard, and then you could like share eggs locally, or you can like sell your eggs
Yeah,
surplus.
I love that. And eggs right now are $13 a dozen.
That's what I'm saying. Like imagine there was a local market for
Yeah.
eggs from your neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is possible. We have the technology. And like, I don't know. I think things like that are great. My goal with sharing ideas like that was to get people, again, thinking outside the box and really questioning like, okay, what are the businesses in my life, what are the institutions that I rely on, that I like sort of take for granted as being a given, that like in theory could be made up of these like many participants that you could yourself participate in.
Yeah, I loved it. Okay, at the end you say these problems are fucking hard, which I totally agree they are. So what inspires you when you're thinking these through? Is it literally like your love of crypto and you're trying to say, how can I bring crypto mainstream, and these are hard problems and crypto can solve it? Are you, with your VC lens, which we will ask a couple of VC questions too, are you more inspired by just like entrepreneurs doing hard things?
I'm definitely inspired by entrepreneurs doing hard things. I think that's definitely true. I think creating lots of value is exciting. I think that's what entrepreneurs get excited about, right? Is changing a lot of people's lives. And I think, again, right now crypto systems are like, there's a lot of protocols which will be developed in the next, let's call it year, 2 years, 3, or that will be started during this time, that will, in a very long period of time, let's call it 5 to 10 years, be like extremely valuable and like well established. They'll have like a very strong foundation because they'll have been building like in this very sort of early time. And so and those will be applications that again like reach large numbers of people, are like extremely impactful, but they'll take a very long time to build and to sort of gain momentum. And so that gives me like, I get excited about what is coming, what is to me inevitably coming. There's like a wave. There's still some like fuzzy, blurry elements to it, but they're like the president is orange, the coin is orange, like the math is like very
Yeah.
simple now.
Yeah.
And it's like, and for America, I mean, we're here in the States, right? Like launching a token like 2 years ago would have been like very dangerous thing for an American founder to think about, right? Certainly if you weren't crypto native. Now the very opposite is true, and there's like never been a better time to do it. So I think we're going to see a lot of movement into crypto over the next few years, and I'm excited about it.
I love that. I love you thinking, because I feel like in crypto, it's like so fast moving and people are thinking, what can we do in the next 6 months or 12? But thinking long term, like somebody building something that might not pop for 5 years is kind of, it's more in traditional companies, I feel like, but less thought about in Web3. So I like that you're thinking that.
I mean, Helium has been going for like 10 years now. Like it's an old
George knows. I mean, George is like, yeah.
They pivoted into crypto too. And I think that's
Wow.
going to be another thing we're going to see
Wow.
a lot of pivoting into crypto where, there's, you know, the fundraising markets are tough out there for non-crypto companies with liquidity and things like that. And if, you know, if you're an equity oriented founder, suddenly if your business model can be based on tokens that have this guaranteed sort of liquidity path for your investors, that's a really amazing outcome for everybody. And I think we're going to see more people moving in that direction too.
So do you think in like 10 years, it's really going to be like, you know, everybody talks about like, to me, Web3 hits when like we don't have to say this is Web3, right? It's just like regular, like we don't say this is the intranet, you know, kind of thing. So like, do you think in 10 years, literally everything will be on chain? Or most things?
I don't think everything will be on chain. I think it will be like a thing that you sign into, like a website that you sign into. But I think everyone will have a method of interacting with crypto. I think they'll probably have many. I think they'll probably be abstracted in a lot of cases too behind applications.
They don't even know.
They might not even know. Yeah. And I think that will be for a certain subset of them.
Yeah.
But I think to me, the thing that I think about more is this idea of like crypto native business models, right? And the idea of like regular people participating. Like this to me is the promise of like the creator economy almost. When we use that word, like I get really excited about like not everyone just being really flashy on YouTube or on TikTok, but like everyone running like a node at home, right? And like participating in these like very large networks. Or like, again, there's like many other things you could do where like the many are participating in the creation of this like collective product. And I think that's like a mindset. And so I think that mindset does require like a little bit of a shift, a little bit of education, and also hopefully a movement towards like wealth. And so I think, people are going to continue joining crypto, some of them for gambling, some of them because they realize tokens can change their lives. And that will be great because tokens will change their lives.
Yeah, I love it. I love this future.
The future is very bright. I'm very optimistic.
Okay, now I'm going to turn it to a couple VC questions because we have a ton of founders at the space all the time. They're always excited. So somebody comes knocking at your door, they have a pitch. What are like instant green flags and instant red flags that like maybe you're just going to be like, okay, bye. And then some that you're like, that actually makes me want to dig in a little harder.
Instant green flag is founders who are super opinionated about their ecosystem or the space that they're in, their market. They should have opinions that are divergent from their peers or from their incumbents, right? That are like hot takes that ideally are driving their strategy. That's like kind of a core part of it. They should be like well informed about their markets. That's another thing. And they should be right. Like I never want to hear a founder, because there's kind of this like default assumption that like as a VC that like the thing that the founder is saying to me, I like assume is true unless I have other reason to believe, like I have reason to believe otherwise. And sometimes they'll say things and I'll open ChatGPT on the side while they continue pitching me and I'll check it and it's not true. And so, and at that point, that'll just pull the air out of your whole pitch. So don't be wrong. Yeah. Like don't be wrong ideally, or be like close to right, or hedge your statements if you need to. Yeah, I think that's kind of the big one. And then the other one that I get annoyed about is just like people who are very stiff in their pitch. I think like the biggest advice I can give founders is like to pitch a lot, very often, to a lot of different types of people. And the goal is that you will get really good at explaining your company in a sort of like very natural conversational way rather than being like really stuck in a sort of certain set of words. And that's really key because ultimately as a VC, I want to have a conversation with you. I want to ask questions and I want to know that you know your business well enough that you can go off script. And people who can't go off script is it's a huge bummer.
Yeah.
Because I mean, some people get nervous. Again, it's a thing you can practice. You should practice a lot, but I don't know. It's ultimately not that hard to. If you're passionate about your business, you love what you're doing, just like show that passion. That's like the best thing you can do.
Keep talking. You kind of said maybe this is it, but like, what would be the number one tip you would give to somebody that's doing a startup and trying to get some funds?
The number one tip I would give to someone, I would change. That would be my tip for fundraising. But my number one tip in general would be to, I mean, like raise less money, like don't raise a lot of money, and be very like capital lean in the beginning. The word like because you're, it'll be like how do I explain this? There's like that old saying of like if you the longer you take the wrong train, the longer it takes you to get home when you eventually.
I never heard this set.
But it's like, but it's like the same is true with like venture money. It's like the more extra money you raise doing the wrong thing, the more time you're going to spend. And it's like, think about it, like your personal time, your life, you're going to spend like doing the wrong thing. So you're like always best off validating your hypotheses, like making sure what you're doing is real and right, and being really rigorous about that in a sort of scientific way. And then raising lots of money, hopefully, when you're right, and finding something you're right about. But being like rigorous in your approach, again, rather than I think an approach in crypto, which is more kind of we'll figure it out as we go. I mean, obviously, you're not going to know everything at the beginning, but you know, a more kind of loose approach that emphasizes capital fundraising and doesn't focus as much on execution. I think to its detriment because again, people just end up wasting a lot of time doing things that don't work.
Yeah, I would also think that if you are running lean, you have to be kind of scrappy and then you're more creative. And so, you know, it's like kind of bringing out the most where when you're like have a lot of funds, maybe you're not as creative.
I think that's true. I think people like, there's like that saying like pressure makes diamonds. And I think that that is true. And like people, if your life is too easy, your life is too easy. You're like not going to, I don't know, worry about your company in the same way. It's not going to like occupy your time in the same way.
Yeah. Well, this was amazing. We're going to take questions now from all the people here, but thanks so much for answering those.
Questions,
George is going to bring you a mic so we can hear you if you want.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. Oh, hold on.
How would you see de-risking or spreading the risk in a modern contemporary way using hard crypto for the issue that we have in Southern California?
Fire insurance. I'm not an expert on the specifics of the fire, but from my understanding, a lot of the issue with regards to the insurance products themselves was based on the fact that the government was blocking the insurance providers from raising the rates past a certain point. And so because they were suppressing the market, those providers left. In theory, in my head, at least, any kind of crypto alternative is going to provide those, like, is going to operate at those higher rates that those other entities maybe otherwise just like weren't able to do that. There's maybe some like regulatory arbitrage there or something. But at the end of the day, I have like a hard time understanding, like if they're just underwriting the risk as being very expensive, then that is what it is. There's like other changes that maybe could be made to, I don't know, Los Angeles's water fire, you know, the way they prevent fires basically, right? So that the risk is not so like expensive, so to speak. But if they've underwritten the risk and it's expensive, then to me in my head, the crypto alternative would be the same price and the government would hate that too or block that too.
So you had talked about, you know, satellite imagery and you're able to really do a lot of GS scanning and so forth and really itemize on every address to come up with a pricing model and then tokenizing that. And so you've got this hard asset and the token associated with that. So when somebody buys their home, they're sort of getting this token with it in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, with regards to specific satellite data being used for policy underwriting, again, I'm not an expert on insurance underwriting, but I don't know how important that is, I guess, or how different that would be than the existing way that those insurers are underwriting those policies. But I think at the end of the day, the issue was the price, from my understanding. And so I don't know that crypto necessarily solves that problem, but maybe in some way.
Have you guys ever Googled a house in Maui that survived the fires? Google that. You'll see an image with everything destroyed and one house remaining that had a metal roof. And I'm like, why don't these insurance companies give incentives for having a metal roof or something?
Right.
I think this insurance industry, I mean, I got fire insurance in my house and they never even came and looked at the house. Like, it's super inefficient. So there's ways to make things more efficient, you know, if you're looking at details and thinking, which I don't think a lot of insurance companies or governments are. But take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I just wanted to comment that, you know, what we're talking about is assuming that the way things are is the way things should be. The thing that makes crypto so unique is that it's DeFi, right? So if we're going to provide insurance, why not provide insurance from the basis of a smart contract that is keyed into, you know, some sort of data, whatever it is, weather data, you know, fire data, whatever it is. Suddenly you've removed the profit margin. And that's the key to providing insurance of any kind, is that it is decentralized and it is separated from this concept of having a middleman whose primary objective is to make money. I mean, how many of you know of people who lost their homes because they had to fight, and then they had to fight the insurance companies to get the payment that they paid their insurance for? So you have to build this up from the ground, from scratch, in order to make it work. I also have a question. So you talked about DePIN and RWA and DeSci as three hard crypto categories. And I'm just wondering, you also mentioned that there are things that are outside of the box. And I was just wondering, could you comment on some other categories if you can think of some?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
Eggs.
the eggs are definitely my perfect counterexample that doesn't fit into any of them.
Somebody start that, please.
Yeah, but I really would love local food. There's so many problems with it, but I think it's a really cool concept. Yeah, that's like the one. I think the way that people think about DePIN, there's many ways you could define DePIN, and the edges are very blurry, and like there's a very myopic view of DePIN that's like like compute or very sort of like basic utility type functions. And then I think there's a broader view of DePIN that's like, I think, more interesting with regards to like complex data that's being provided into a network from these like global nodes, or like some curation that's happening or something. So that's like one. On the DeSci space, again, I think there's like interesting and complex stuff that will be built around, again, the way that data can be collected from the many, and like aggregated and valuable stuff can happen. Again, that will kind of like bleed out of DeSci, but DeSci is like a flag in the ground that's adjacent to that.
One of my favorite examples that I recently heard about is everybody, decentralizing power. So we're no longer relying on PG&E and so forth. And so everybody has their solar panel on their roof, but what if that solar panel goes out and is no longer functioning? Well, you have these small units of connected solar panels that are being coordinated by an AI agent. And that AI agent can then tell this, whoever, this thing isn't working, it needs to be fixed, or the power from this subunit needs to be sent over there. And suddenly you've changed the world.
Totally. I agree. There's a lot.
I liked a lot what you said about the prediction markets. And we had now the discussion about insurances. And actually, every house could be a prediction market. And then you could make predictions on the insurance price and have the wisdom of the crowd. I like what you said. That was my point, actually, with more words. And you said we get now more and more hard crypto real-world use cases in the Web3, which is great. Do you think we will have now a trend from Web2 people building more Web3, or do Web3 people learn how the real world works?
I think it will technically be both, but I think the former will far outcompete the latter. I think there is a lot of very, very, very smart people, very serious people who are not crypto native, who have laughed about crypto for a long time, who have thought that it's like very scammy technology for a very long time, who build real businesses, right? Who are experts in like hardware or in biology or whatever, right? And those people, I think, will be founders of some of this next generation of hard crypto companies. At the same time, I think that every great team, it's like the Beatles had 4 people, right? It's like, and everyone was different in their own way. I think that like these great founding teams will have a crypto native person on the team or a crypto native element, people who understand how the world works here, because it is very unique, very different. And those people will need to learn how the real world works as part of that. But I'm personally more bullish and more excited on those kind of real world companies joining crypto. I think it's much easier to learn now that the risk model has changed, again, with regulations and stuff. That I think is going to open the door substantially. And they're just very serious people. There's a lot of very serious people out there who are going to eat our lunch. Okay, there's some questions here.
I think Alex has the
Okay,
mic.
cool.
Oh, Alex has one.
Hey,
Okay.
Mark, what's up? Hey, how's it going? So there's this platform called Pump Fund, which is like this meme coin launcher that made
I've never
half a
heard of it.
million by like 20 years old something, and it was insane.
Wow.
And
that
now
sounds
it's no
awesome.
longer just for meme coins. There's actual companies, like the founder of Venmo just launched his company as a coin straight away. But it's true, it's a company, Jelly.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, like, do you think that's a good way of launching your company? Because you said like, oh, like the hard harder companies, they should launch there because there's more liquidity. Well, Pump Fund is immediate liquidity. So I'm curious if like you're curious, like if you like this model or.
Very true. I mean, I think, oh, that's such a good question. There's a few things I'll say. Number one, just very practically speaking, if you're a founder launching a token for your business, if you're trying to use that token to build your business as like a useful element of a token model, you probably need to retain a large percentage of the token supply for treasury, which is not like a trivial or common thing with a lot of the meme coins. If you're launching a meme coin, let the community, or like burn the supply, or like let the community have it, like whatever. And then that meme coin is like a marketing tool. So I think like those two strategies, I would do different things there. I think the other question here around the broader question, right, around like venture capital versus tokens, right, and liquidity and access to that. I think there's a lot of like, so you mentioned my article, The Token is the Product. I think one of the key things that I would highlight from there that I think about very commonly, right, is this idea that at the end of the day, as a founder selling a token, your goal is to find people who will hold on to that token for an extremely long period of time and never sell it, right? And I mean, even in an ideal world, you would be able to contractually guarantee that those people will never sell it. You might even also get some advice from them every so often, right? And like that is a VC. And so like maybe there's a world where like everyone becomes a VC. That's maybe a good thing for the world. I like don't really know, but there are certain things that like good VCs will offer you, again, like like long lockups, or like not selling your token immediately, being there along for the ride, helping you along the way. Good investors do that. And I think there's always going to be a sort of like a market for that, or a need for that alongside public markets. Some founders might like struggle to reach VCs, or it'll like maybe always be easier to raise from the public. So I'm glad it exists. But at the end of the day, for a founder, it's always going to be more ideal to have like maybe a little bit of venture capital fundraising at my head initially, and then launch your token with like a very kind of more solid foundation, because it's just a very like expensive task. You've launched a token, right? You know how sort of like time expensive it is, and like stressful, and like how much energy it takes, and it's like a big deal. And so if you're doing that at the very beginning of your business, when you're first starting your company, do you want like 95% of your founder time going towards managing this token? No, probably not. You want to just like raise a little bit of money, get that done, go build your business. And then once you kind of establish that, then you can sort of think about this like asset that maybe has some utility to you. That's how I would think about it, like if I were a founder. Because yeah, good VCs are still very useful. Maybe everyone becomes a VC, but I don't think so. And I don't think that's like a good thing either.
Never.
Who else has?
Okay, 2 more questions. Yeah, sure.
All right.
Yes.
So
Okay,
coming
amazing.
back to the whole other subject on the raise. And you said, I think that founders should have much smaller raises, raise a lot less money. So I want to give you a spin on this. I want to ask you your thoughts about how much for the raise at what stage? Okay, because maybe you have somebody who's just got an idea, which is very traditional in this space. That's kind of the ethos. what about those people who've bootstrapped and worked really hard and have all of that cool, amazing real world and crypto experience and have just like rocked something? So there's a whole gamut in between. What would you say that scenario could look like for raises of the sweet spot? Like for don't raise too much.
Oh, you mean like in terms of how much you should raise, I guess is that question?
Yeah, well, you said founders should not raise too much.
Yeah.
And so there's, people who've bootstrapped and like put in crazy amount of grit.
Yeah.
And then you have people who just like, oh, I got some idea, man, and I'm gonna go out and like fair launch it, you
Yeah.
know? So there's don't take too much money, but there's
Right.
these criteria. So give me
Right.
3, if you don't mind,
Sure.
your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, okay. I'll actually give you 3 different archetypes of this that might answer this question. Number 1 will be kind of an anti-pattern, but it does happen sometimes in crypto, funny enough, where the founder bootstraps the company, but has actually invested like a non-trivial amount of money into the company because the founder just like had that money. You'll see this sometimes with like people who work at startups that have exits, or in crypto, people who do well, they'll like invest a lot of their own money into startups. And again, it's like that analogy of like, if you take the wrong train in the wrong direction, it takes you longer to get back. And if you're investing your own money, oftentimes those people don't necessarily have feedback loops in the same way that other people do, right? Which is like external, like external investors you like owe updates to or whatever, right? So that is kind of an anti-pattern that I see. That's like one way of like, if like don't invest, like bootstrapping is great for the record, but don't invest like large amounts of your own capital into your company. It's like probably not going to end well. That's like number 1. Number 2 is, yeah, just the clean bootstrap, what you talked about, which is like, the ramen diet, working late nights, maybe you're working full time and you're doing this on the side, or, you have some money saved up and you're kind of funding yourself for a few months while you're getting it off the ground, but you're not investing large capital. You're not spending your capital hiring other people. You're really just kind of like paying for your own living expenses. Maybe you and your co-founders are, paying for your living expenses. Maybe some like small costs associated with testing your hypothesis, right? But ideally you want to bootstrap to the point where you have validated your hypotheses. Sometimes not everyone can do that. Again, that's why, like angel checks exist. Boost, we have like a 50K founder start check that is kind of like meant for this opportunity where, sometimes we'll have like researchers who are, who like work full time at some big pharma company and are like, hey, I want to be a founder, but I need a little bit of capital to get started. We'll give them a founder start check, or angel checks are good. But in general, you want to have like a very small amount of capital in the beginning and just be validating your hypotheses, and do that as cheaply and quickly as you possibly can. And once you are armed with the proof that what you are working on is useful and valuable to somebody, then you can take that to an investor and say, hey, I want to raise X amount of capital. And that X should be the minimum amount that you need to start making enough money that you can validate that this is real, that you've like proven that this is a real business, not just like a good idea that someone maybe would pay for, but like something that is like actively generating money. And that's like maybe something on the order of like hundreds of thousands of dollars or something like that in that sort of first raise. Yeah, and then from there, things kind of diverge very quickly. Again, a lot of this will be based on like the cost structure of your business. But most of the time, if it's software, again, if it's hard crypto, maybe you have like some hard assets you need to manufacture. That's expensive, totally understand. But if you're building a software company, especially with AI now, like it's never been cheaper. And we know that, like on the venture side, everyone knows. And so, yeah, like trying to be as nimble as possible, move as like inexpensively as you can. Like that's always going to be a benefit, because the alternative is that you're like setting yourself up for these really high hurdles that you eventually have to exceed the next round when you raise, and where you have to have that higher valuation. You have to be justifying that, and that just becomes very tough for founders who raise a lot too much too early. All right, I think you're here. If you can, yeah.
Okay, we'll do 2 more because George has one there, and then you.
there's okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, perfect.
So I heard all the different routes you described. Somehow it did not really fit the route that the project from the Amazon rainforest took. It kind of like organically backed itself into a DAO form. And that model did not really gel well with VCs who are actually looking at future values. It's more like a grassroots movement of people that really believe in the vision and the values. And then they started contributing, right? And then like now it kind of like backed itself into hard crypto, because when we started like sourcing for cacao in the Amazon rainforest, no one actually knew any farmers, right? And then the members like saying, okay, I know. And then like, okay, I'll contribute my time. Or like, then they introduce their farmers and they get the governance tokens. And later on, we're like, hey, we got the cacao, right? It's like, does anyone know how to like clear all the legal clearances? It's like, fuck, no one knows, right? And then the members like say, okay, I'll go recruit some members for governance tokens. And they brought the experts in and we cleared the legal. And then after that was like saying, hey, you know what? It's kind of hard to convince distributors to carry our stuff, right? And distribute it in US. Then like some DAO members came in and say, you know what? You can just like use my backyard. Then it became like, oh, suddenly we have like a whole fulfillment distribution service just like pop up from scratch, right? Like the year before last, we had just one here. But since this year, after we kind of like left the World Economic Forum, we have like 6, like 2 to 3 popping up in Europe right now, 2 more coming up in the US, and then we have like 1 very active one in like Brazil and like 1 in China that's kind of like springing up, and we're all following the same rules. So yeah, it's very fascinating, but at the same time, in my head, it's very hard to resolve this with a traditional VC financing model. It's almost like if you go this route, you probably say bye-bye to like VCs forever because you're never going to be dealing with them. How would you actually like approach this?
That's such a great question. The short answer I'll say is like maybe you would be writing off VC capital, right? So like for this project specifically, right? I know they've been at it for a while, the coffee and tokenized rainforest stuff, right? So and when they started, my hunch was there were very few VCs who were deploying into DAOs. I think there are probably far more of them now. Just the appetite from venture investors into this type of protocol is probably like just much more robust right now than it was back then, because I think it's just been de-risked a little bit more in terms of just investing in DAOs, investing in these protocols. Obviously, this protocol, it was just like very early. They were like the first ones 2, 3, 4 years ago. I think at a higher level, though, there's this question of like launching directly to your community, right, versus raising venture funding. I think FWB kind of did this, where they started with a token, right, or they started with a community. They launched a token, they distributed it, and then and they had a treasury for themselves. And then they eventually sold a bunch of those tokens to, I think it was Andreessen Horowitz. And they had a treasury and they spent that money and did good things, right? So kind of going back to Alex's question, right? Like for them, a partner like Andreessen Horowitz is very useful, right? A partner who, you know, Andreessen Horowitz is not about to sell all those tokens on the open market. They get to get a bunch of USDC, right, or liquid US dollars that they can spend to fund their operations outside of just, you know, the token itself, which is great, right? I'm sure it's useful for them to not just having to pay people with the governance token, but with dollars. So, yeah, I think there's like a symbiotic relationship between a model like that and VCs. You just need to find the VC who's open to that kind of opportunity. And I think, again, like I said, I think there's more now than there would have been when they would have really needed the money. Now I'm sure maybe it's like a different situation. But yeah.
Okay, last question.
Last question.
Hey, Mark. First of all, thank you for being here. Big fan of your writing, and I just appreciate you sharing your narratives with the world. Like you're like the PG of crypto, in my opinion. So my name is John Lee. My background in crypto, I was the head of engineering at Chainlink, and currently I'm building something in stealth at the intersection of pretty much graded Pokemon cards and sports cards, social networks, and blockchain.
Okay.
I loved your thesis on hard crypto. I think it was exactly right. We've seen so many great examples like Helium and utility-based applications. And we also saw some boom and busts like Nike's Artifact and Sotheby's art collection. So I feel there's like a kind of a range that you get in hard crypto. You have utility service-based applications, and you have, you know, essentially false promises from the Bored Ape DAO. So like, what is your narrative for like hard crypto, at least in terms of like consumer applications? Because the one thing I love about hard crypto is when I try to explain blockchain and ownership to my immigrant parents, they're like, why are you working on Dogecoin? You know, so I was curious, like, what your thoughts are about the consumer side, and if you feel bearish or bullish overall.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the point I'll tease out here is that we, like we're sitting here in San Francisco, and so consumer to us typically means like a Western consumer. I think more and more it's becoming clear that, one view of consumer crypto is like stable coins for the masses, right? And another one is like pump fun, which is like degeneracy for the masses. And they're two totally different kinds of financial utilities. And I think we're going to see both of them. The question of who benefits more from hard crypto, my hunch is that the like countries that right now are seeing a lot of stablecoin penetration will probably also be the ones that sort of like leapfrog the West in these decentralized protocols. Because again, there's like so much demand for, like alternative utilities and things like that. But going into, there's just like so much more of a demand. So that's like my hunch, but I don't know. And I think there's something like specifically about the West. You mentioned you're working on Pokemon cards and risk, right? And I think there's like something innate about the desire for that people like want to take risk, and we see that like even outside of crypto. And I don't know that that's going away, although I think it might change and evolve. So, I think that.
I appreciate that. I think one thing that I found as a recent narrative is, we view crypto, it's like this ultra volatile asset. And I see a lot of the big crypto influencers like Colby and Sol Jakey. They're like, I need to actually de-risk my portfolio. I'm going to park it in like this $100,000 Pikachu. And there's actually good value on that. So I do see an interesting almost de-risking of folks that are in crypto now trying to use their funny internet money, as you call it, into actually having a tangible asset itself.
Yeah, $100,000. I love NFTs, but $100,000 Pokemon card just like scares me. It scares me. I don't even know why. But then the other hand, no, but really, but then on the other hand, it's like at the end of the day, future generations can choose what they assign value to. And if Pokemon cards are it, and there's like some evidence that Pokemon cards are it, especially the like extremely rare ones, then that is a store of value, and like nothing else matters. And I do think there's like it's entirely possible that Pokemon cards do end up being that. So
great questions. Thanks, everyone. And I want to thank Mark so much for coming tonight. Thank you so much. Also, it was Mark's birthday this week. So if you see him, give him a big birthday hug. But thank you so much for coming. And once again, check out his thesis, and then you can also sign up to just hear all his writing. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to bring George up to introduce the rest of the team. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Noëlle. Thanks again, Mark. So we're going to kick off pitches with Eric Alberg and Giga.
All right. Sweet. We didn't get that on the record, but now we're starting. Yeah, we're a bit of a different startup. We're extremely ambitious. You just gotta disclose. So it's a bit of a different, like it's a difficult challenge. What we're building is what Facebook was back in 2010, a super app, but with the vision of today that people own their own data, developers can build awesome apps. Like you remember Farmville back in 2010, like all of those apps, but with NFTs, with all the crypto vision. So let's get into it. Basically, it's a super app that we trust. And super apps are, becoming the talk of the town again. X, Elon Musk is going to build the super app, the everything app, right? That's not really happening. It's been 2 years. Meta is, launching AI in all of their platforms, basically copying ChatGPT. And ChatGPT 2 are more and more becoming public that they want to become an everything app because it just makes sense. Like with AI, you kind of want the interface to kind of step away and just let the model do its thing. And then the interface is still going to be dear, and that's just going to be the super app, basically. But let's make it good, because the web as it is today, it really infringes on privacy, and it's not as social as it could be. Like your data is used against you. That sucks. And we need something like connecting people. It just calls for innovation. And it doesn't look like the big giants are going to do it. But people really want something. Like they're not happy with Meta. Like there was this trend that they wanted to deinstall Instagram. They're probably back now, but there's some things that are launching, like Blue Sky. And the services went down because of the usage. And we're still seeing a lot of Blue Sky usage. That's basically just a Twitter clone where you own your own data. So there's a big demand. But what is a super app really, if you think about it? Like it's like a social web browser. It combines a social network with a web browser and an AI interface. And you can utilize all the data that you have on the web with all your group chats, all your browsing history and so forth. When you talk with AI, when you talk with friends or just research anything. So we're now introducing our very first version of Giga, where you can talk with friends, talk with AI, talk with the world, and just have fun and explore the web. So all of these things you're seeing here are basically websites, and you can think of like a WhatsApp group or a news feed. These are just basically URLs that are aggregated in a news feed or a group view. And all of this is built in the spirit of Web3. So we built this backend basically called Peerbit because we wanted to build this in the spirit of Web3, but tried out the tools that were out there that didn't work. So spent a lot of time on building Peerbit, which has really reaped rewards, because now it's basically what Pied Piper is in the series. Like we can actually have like 4K live streams directly between device to device that scales very well. So it's basically, if you're going to send a 4K video to 100,000 people, you can't do that direct. So you have to go through many intermediaries. So we managed to basically like run entire Twitch, but purely decentralized. And if you can do that for like 4K videos, you can do it for all kinds of data. So that's the back end, and that's the main topic of today. And yeah, this is kind of where we are now. We're launching right now, raising seed round, and soon we'll launch the AI interface and more like group chats, and then the web browser is also coming this year. And the long-term goal is to create a world computer for safe and social AI. So the team, it's me and my co-founder, and we, known each other since high school and built in AI for a long time, and also built in crypto. I worked in DeFi for a while. And yeah, hiring engineers and full stack devs, designers right now. So just scroll through these last slides a bit quick, but our go-to-market is mainly about creating a social experience that's so awesome Like, how did TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram grow? It was just awesome. And you're going to tell your friends about it. But also, there's going to be the token integrated. So every referral, you get some Giga tokens. Every time you create content or curate content, you get some Giga. And then we have some business models. We're not going to get too deep into it. And then the actual backend, it's basically a really scalable peer-to-peer database that has really good sharding and syncing between devices. And yeah, we're creating the super app that you can trust where your data, AI, and social life converge.
I have time for 2 quick questions.
Good pitch. So you're using peer-to-peer, so everyone on the network is serving up the content. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you using Urbit or Nostr?
We looked at everything that's out there and had to build our own stuff. It's built on libp2p though, which is a library from IPFS Protocol Labs. So that's the lowest dependency. But then all the sharding, syncing, and like data transfer protocols are built from scratch. So it's like peerbit.org. It's a upcoming peer-to-peer database. The Tether founder is using it for one of his upcoming projects. But yeah, it's a very, very difficult engineering problem that's taken a long time.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, there we go. I'm Henry. I'm the founder of Starta. We're the SoFi for DeFi. I'll start out with one stat. 48% of Americans have credit card debt. They think their average balance is around $7,000. So just keep that in mind. So let's meet Bob. You know, Bob wants a DeFi loan. He happens to be one of 70 million people who hold $500 billion of crypto here in the US. One of 69 million who have no idea what MetaMask might be, let alone Aave or Compound. And unfortunately for Bob, he was also one of the 9 million people who were burnt by using centralized lenders like BlockFi and Celsius. So Bob is left, you know, to his own devices, and he finds the existing DeFi solutions out there. And he quickly realizes that there's complex and poor UX. You know, it takes 2 to 4 transactions to get a loan going. You're surprised by liquidations. I mean, anyone who's taken a DeFi loan, I think most of the time you find out after the fact you've just been liquidated, or sometimes weeks or months. And you know, the way that DeFi lending works today, in case you don't know, I kind of say it's kind of like an adjustable rate mortgage that can adjust every 2 to 12 seconds. So your 8% loan, this is real historical data, by the way, your 8% loan on November 18th can be a 42% loan by the 20th. And unless you're actively moving your money into and out of different protocols, which if you have a loan and you've spent the money already, you can't do that. You're basically just eating this cost. And the other thing is, you know, once you have your USDC, how do you actually spend it? That's actually not intuitive for the average person. We've done a lot of user testing and people are afraid of pressing the wrong button and losing everything. You know, it's a very common occurrence. And so what Bob needs is Starta. And Starta is a better DeFi loan. We have consumer-friendly UX, and I'll show you in a moment just how quickly you can get a loan through us. We actually warn you ahead of time of things like liquidations, so you'll have a margin call alert. And then we also have stable rates. So you'll see this is how our rate compares for the same historical period against Aave's rates. And then with the upcoming starter card, you can just tap to spend. So you don't have to think about off-ramping. So this is a demo of Starta. So this is a loan I took out this afternoon. We're currently on base testnet. You basically specify your collateral asset, how much you want to borrow. We give you a confirmation prompt. You sign a message. We give you your own self-custodial wallet, which will be secured by passkeys after an upgrade. And then we're done. So there you go. That was a Starta loan in under 30 seconds. Thank you. So we're not just eye candy. We actually also have a next-gen protocol underneath. So I've spent the past year rewriting over and over again a lending protocol, which is on the more complex side of DeFi things to do. I don't recommend it if you're just trying to build something for fun. What we've done is that we've actually re-engineered the protocol for user experience in mind. So for us, it only takes one transaction to take a loan out. We have the least volatile rates because Starta is the first globally aware lending protocol. So all the other lending protocols are simply local markets. They have no idea. Aave on Ethereum has no idea what Aave on Arbitrum is doing, right? And so let alone any other protocol. So what we have here is our Starta Global Rate Index for Bitcoin and USD. We actually can see what Aave's rates are, what Compound's rates are, what Spark, which is MakerDAO, what their rates are, and we can quote against it. And so this Oracle is something we commissioned from a company called OpenLayer, and it's secured by EigenLayer. So there's a lot of economic security behind the accuracy of this rate. And the other thing that we've done is that this is an intent-driven design. What this means is that with a lot of existing protocols, there's a lot of dead money just sitting there doing nothing. And for us, we can actually allow for real-time provisioning of loans. So the dollars don't have to enter the ecosystem, or USDC rather, until there's a request for a loan. And our go-to-market strategy is to go deep and to go wide. So with the app, we want Starta, the app, to be the best-in-class holistic borrowing experience. So if you just want a really great app that just does nothing but give you a great loan, that would be our app. But what we found is that we've had partners like exchanges and off-ramps reaching out to us for this type of integration. And so we will also have an SDK available where we productize parts of the app. And of course, we have a protocol which allows for direct integrations. And partners can get fee splits from the loan. And speaking of super apps, we're seeing a lot of DeFi super apps coming on board. So we can power their borrow and lending modules, and even other SDKs. The key thing for us, what we're seeing is if there's any crypto mobile app, we can always add that lending functionality to them because that unlocks more capital for the user to do whatever it is they want with that mobile app. And a little bit about our team. I basically handled everything that's on-chain. My co-founder did everything that's off-chain. I come from the advertising world, actually, from 4 or 5 years ago. I built the first post-quantum messenger on Ethereum. And then my co-founder, he's really good at scaling Web2 products. So we do have an app, of course, and their intent-based architectures also have Web2 components as well. So that's a bit about us. And then if you have an iOS device, you can join our open beta right now. Well, I guess it's open to you guys. And if you happen to be at ETH Denver, I'm staying at the Based House, which the Base team is sponsoring around 12 devs. So, feel free to come swing by and hang out if you happen to be there. Thank you.
Very nice. Any questions?
Thanks. Very cool to see. Great user experience on top of crypto.
Thank you.
Lending is a marketplace, right? And so you've got a great experience for the consumer. It's clear if I want a loan, how easy it is to get there. One of the reasons rates go up and down so much, of course, is to benefit the lenders, which brings liquidity into the system. How do you approach the bringing lenders into the system and providing them a good experience?
Yeah, well, I want to touch upon that a bit. Actually, the main reason rates go up is to punish the borrower, to force them to repay. So most lending protocols have what's called a utilization curve. And it's very inefficient because most people are not checking what the utilization curve while they sleep. And so what it effectively does is that it's forcing the rates really high to make you hurt enough to be like, oh crap, I should repay this loan now, right? That's actually the function of that. So there's always trade-offs in these designs. What we're doing is, if you saw the demo, we actually have a term. So starter loans actually are term loans with a very stable variable rate, right? And so the counterparties coming into it realize that their capital could be locked up to a certain date. When repayments come, when maturities are due, capital gets unlocked. And we're finding, there's some interesting designs we have where we can basically simulate the unlocking of capital that's necessary, which is what the utilization curve is essentially there to do, without punishing the borrower. And on the other side of it, there are strategy vaults where you can redeploy collateral. So, for us, we have an average rate, as I kind of mentioned before. So by the definition, since we are an index, there's always going to be some protocol where you can resell the liquidity to, where you can get a deal if you just want to arbitrage rates. So that's, yeah, it's intent-based architecture stuff, so happy to talk a bit more about that.
Thank you.
So great presentation. My question, which really brought me here tonight, is the tokenization of real estate assets. We kind of sit at that intersection as developers and looking at new models for raising capital. And essentially what today's conversation was about is bridging and de-risking, cryptocurrency into more physical assets. And you have presented an amazing product. What are your thoughts around the second leg, which is not only the de-risking and getting access to the capital, but also investing in other alternative assets, particularly real estate? You've solved the challenge of how do you index, how do you stabilize APR? The next round becomes how do these crypto owners start to acquire physical assets, mainly real estate?
Yeah, a funny thing that's kind of adjacent to that is, in case you didn't know, like car titles are now on chain, I think, for California, right? So I think the most exciting point of an NFT is when houses become NFTs, and they become collateral assets that you can pledge. And I think for us, we have right now we have 1-year terms. We can easily stretch that out to be a 15-year term and essentially recreate that mortgage model. There's no reason why we can't do it. I think the only thing that kind of needs to catch up perhaps is legal recognition of the NFT. Like what happens if someone steals your wallet? Do they have your house now? Things like that, right? So, and yeah, I think it's interesting. It's an interesting times. I think we'll get there sooner, or hopefully sooner. Yeah.
I see a very interesting use case, which is a combination of what you have and what he has built, right? Because right now, climate change is really affecting agriculture around the world. The cacao price itself has shot up by more than 400% just in the year, it was like December 2023 until January 2024. And now it's like still going up, like skyrocketing like Bitcoin.
Oh, wow.
So
buy me some chocolate.
Yeah, to help yourself to some afterwards. And what we've observed with like the farmers, some of them like starting to hog onto their beans, like gold bars.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and one interesting thing that we kind of like are exploring within our DAO itself is kind of like how to acquire those cacao, tokenize those. I mean, like once it's sold, right? But when it's like not sold, it's technically kind of like circulated somewhere, maybe here, as a form of investment. So your money, which is kind of locked in, could actually be redeployed to some digital assets that's actually like backed by real world assets, which is skyrocketing because of climate change. And climate change is not going to go away. Yeah. So
it's really interesting. Like as a lending protocol designer, the number one thing I'm obsessed with is efficient liquidations. So I think that's the key thing when it comes to any type of real world asset, which is like, how do we make sure it's more complicated at this point, right? So like if you have a loan and let's say the cacao market crashes, then there needs to be a selling off of the asset to recover my original USDC I fronted you, right? I think, interestingly enough, I heard in some Latin American countries that crypto laws actually kind of advance where even the state of things are, whatever the state of things are here. I think if that, if just smart contracts become legal contracts, I think that becomes very interesting. Oh, question. Yep, go ahead. Yeah, there's no credit score. There's no credit check involved. I think that's the beauty of crypto. If you have the asset, it is an over-collateralized loan. So you have to have your Bitcoin, Ethereum, also Chainlink tokens. Those are like three of their initial assets. Like, correct. Yeah, because we have to account for the volatility, right? So we'll give you up to around 80 cents on the dollar. I would recommend you not taking the full 80 because, if you cross over, that means we have to start selling a slice of it to maintain ratios. Currently, no. Yeah. I think we don't want to get into the repo man business just yet. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Big thank you to Eric, Michael, Henry, Mark, and Noelle for an awesome evening. If you guys want to learn more about the House of Web3, speak to me, speak to Trish. If you want to become a co-creator, if you want to host events, we're the two people to talk to. If you want to learn more about the graph, talk to Pranav, talk to Dan, talk to Marion. We're here to help you guys out, and let's do it. And then Rodrigo, of course. All right, everyone. Thank you. Enjoy some drinks. Enjoy each other. See you.
Guys, one more announcement. Michael from 3FA here. We are hiring a founding engineer. So if you're an engineer and you want to change the world, come talk to me. Thank you.